David Cobb is on the line with us, the national spokesperson for Move to Amend, former Green Party candidate for President of the United States. MoveToAmend.org, of course, the website that I am constantly ranting about on this program. David, welcome back.
Thank you, Tom, and thanks for all that good ranting. I can always tell you are definitely at the cutting edge of corporate personhood out here in the hustings.
Well, thank you. In the hustings. Boy, I haven't heard that phrase in a while. David, I want to talk with you about constitutional conventions and about how we get amendments into the Constitution. I've heard and read conflicting information, and you and I have had this conversation before, and I never really clearly understood it. I know that if Congress, if a constitutional amendment is presented by Congress to Congress, and then it, and passes Congress, and you can tell me what kind of majority is necessary in either or both houses, then they send it out to the states, and I think it's 2/3 of Congress and 3/4 of the states. Isn't that it?
That's right. And Tom, if I could, let's just make sure that we're clear there. Ratifying any proposal to the Constitution will require 3/4 of the state legislatures to agree, or 3/4 of the states. It could be through legislative pronouncement, it could be through a statewide vote, but 3/4 of the states must agree. So it's a heavy political lift. To propose amendments, there are two ways under Article 5 that are clearly laid out. Number one, 2/3 of Congress can agree upon specific language, at which point it goes to the states for a ratification process, or 2/3 of the states can call for a constitutional convention, at which point whatever comes out of that convention must be sent to the states for ratification. And therein lies the rub. We've only ever used 2/3 of congressional approval for proposing amendments. The question of conventions is, the reason that there's some confusion is because it's never been done before. The Constitution is silent. So scholars have some difference of opinion about whether you can have a, quote, limited subject constitutional convention, or whether any constitutional convention must, by definition, be completely wide open for any consideration. But remember this, no matter what comes out of a convention, it still must have 3/4 of the states to ratify before it amends the Constitution.
So the convention is actually a bunch of people getting together and saying, let's work on this?
Yes. I mean, this is the interesting thing. Because the Constitution itself is silent, we have to look to state conventions. We have to look to legal scholars and constitutional scholars, and then to, as you have often done, to the Federalist Papers and other places where we can understand what the founders sort of had intended by it.
Okay, well, here's what provoked this confusion on my part, and it might have simply been a misinformed caller. I had a caller a couple of weeks ago who represented himself as an attorney, who said that, typically it takes a long time for a constitutional amendment to pass. A great example, the 27th. It was originally proposed on September 25th, 1789, and was ratified on May 7th, 1992. So it took almost 200 years. In fact, it took 203 years. On the other hand, this fellow said the 26th Amendment was proposed on March 23rd of 71 and was ratified on July 1st of 71. So that's like 4 months. March, April, May, June, July, 4 months. And he said the reason it was proposed and ratified so quickly was because 3/4 of the states had already passed resolutions or proposals or whatever, saying, yes, we will vote for this. And so when Congress took the thing up, they already knew it was a done deal, and it passed very, very quickly. And it was an example of a constitutional amendment basically being driven from the states up to Congress rather than from Congress down to the states. Can you speak to that?
Yes, I think that I would agree with this, that when you have states ready to go to ratify, that means that there is already the political will and the political agreement that is inherent in that process. So a ratification could, in fact, take place very quickly. But I will point out that under that circumstance, it still required 2/3 of the Congress to propose the language itself. So it doesn't really imply what to do around a convention.
So 3/4 of the states passed a constitutional amendment saying that, money is not found in the First Amendment, is not protected by the First Amendment, and corporations are not found in the 14th Amendment, are not protected by the 14th Amendment. Just in a very simple language, something that the majority of Americans agree with. If 3/4 of the states passed that as a constitutional amendment, that does not force the United States Congress to take it up and call for a 3/4 vote or a 2/3 vote.
That's correct. Unfortunately, it does not. That's why what we at Move to Amend say, to imagine a trail or a path. At some point, we're going to come to a fork in the road that says, is the proposal going to come from 2/3 of Congress or 2/3 of the states calling for a convention itself? Now, Tom,
2/3 or 3/4 of the states?
2/3. Remember that the proposal, its ratification is 3/4 of the states.
Proposing the Constitutional Convention is 2/3
of Congress, yes, or 2/3 of the states.
Okay.
The point is that we know that we have a lot of political road to travel. We've got a lot of educating to do. We've got a lot of work to do. We've got a lot of organizing to do. So that's what we're doing. We at Move to Amend are ambivalent about whether Congress or a state convention at this point, because we don't think we've built the political will, the political pressure. And one way we know this is that almost every candidate for office has refused to take a formal position on corporate constitutional rights.
Right.
And we're not fussing about it. We're just doing the work of educating, organizing, and agitating. And ultimately, we're going to make this a political question that no candidate for office can avoid.
Right. And then the candidates for office will aggressively get behind it because they will see that the parade is big enough that they need to jump in front of it with a flag. The metaphor we've discussed before. So, David, does it not give you the creeps, the idea that there might be a convention that completely opens up the entire Constitution to tinkering in an era when in many states the majority of the legislators are actually owned by a couple of billionaires?
Yeah, of course it does. And I want to be clear about this, Tom. If I could push a button and make a constitutional convention happen tomorrow, not only would I not push that button, I would guard that button with my life to make sure that nobody else pushed it. And that's the
for
point.
That reason.
Yes, for that very reason. Because we're not ready. The people of the United States of America are not ready. We haven't done the work of becoming engaged citizens. What Thomas Jefferson, described, in the concept of the yeoman farmer,
right.
The idea of self-reliant people who understand their role as sovereigns in this government and structure. So we are beginning that process, and we do think it's a 10, 20-year process to really get ourselves to that stage.
Right.
And so we don't think that just having a convention tomorrow is something that we want to advocate for. What we're advocating for is the abolition of the illegitimate court-created idea that corporations have inherent inalienable constitutional rights and that money is not speech. Those two things, Tom, are going to be amendments to the Constitution. We are confident. And it will either come because we have completely changed Congress or because we have completely changed state legislators. And that's the work that we ought to just dedicate ourselves the same way the American revolutionaries did, the women's suffrage movement, the trade union movement, the civil rights movement. Let's just acknowledge that that's the level of political, cultural, spiritual work that we need to engage.
I am totally with you, David, and we're doing that here on this program. MoveToAmend.org. David Cobb. Thank you, David.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks for all you do. Bye now.
Keep up the great work.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
That's MoveToAmend.org. And so, as David said, we've got to wake everybody up. If you can just wake up 3 or 4 people, that's a big first step.